Back in the early 2000s, when I was getting into my teenage years, because I'm super old, there was a problem, and there was this conversation they would commonly need to have about the relationship called a DTR, define the relationship. Maybe some of you have heard this, but thankfully there was an invention that, American inventions, what they are, this thing called Facebook came out. You may have heard of it at some point. I know it's really rare, one of those weird US things. One of the cool things they did there was they defined a relationship status. So first options that they had out there when Facebook first rolled out the relationship status. Single, in a relationship, engaged, married, in an open relationship, or it's complicated. Later on, as the years have gone by, Facebook has realized that wasn't inclusive enough. They needed more options. So now, in addition to those, we have widowed, separated, divorced, in a civil union, in a domestic partnership. In the midst of that, it's complicated. And there have been others who have said, you know what, Facebook, you still missed the mark. Here's some other suggestions. Talking, kind of talking, something but nothing, confused, leading someone on, being led on by someone, mutual understanding, no boyfriend or girlfriend since birth, exclusively dating, in love, brokenhearted, bitter, forever alone. I think the summary is, it's complicated. What we're going to look at this morning is a complicated and beautiful gift. The gift of your marital status. Whatever it may be, your marital status is a God-given gift for the gospel. So we're going to look at this text. I'm going to read it. I'm going to pray. We're going to dive in. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 7. I wish that all were as I myself am, but each has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. To the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain single as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. To the married I give this charge, not I but the Lord, the wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, she should remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to her husband, and the husband should not divorce his wife. To the rest I say, I not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever, and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? And how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? God, thank you for speaking through many men, many authors over the course of history to give us your words, these words of life by which you inform us the way things are. You reveal yourself to us. You reveal ourselves to us. I pray that you would be speaking today, that as we give up this offering of worship, of speaking and listening to your scripture, that you would use it and you would multiply it, that your spirit would be active to speak to our hearts, to change us. If you don't speak, there will be nothing good that happens right now. We will just be hearing words. So please, Spirit, be active, be touching us, be applying this in very specific ways to our life circumstances, that we would be able to better live out the gospel in life, better encourage our brothers and sisters, better reach out to the lost in Cloverdale and Surrey, in the Lower Mainland. For the glory of your name, for the good of your church. In Jesus' name, amen. So this text, verse 7 through 16, this comes in the midst of Paul's discussion that started at chapter 7, verse 1, when he said, now concerning the matters about which you wrote. The first 6 chapters of 1 Corinthians, Paul's responding to stuff he's heard about. I heard from these people that this was going on. I heard from these people that this was going on. Like, what are you doing? You guys are nuts. And then he's like, okay, so now concerning the matters about which you wrote. So there are several different things the Corinthians seemingly asked Paul about in a letter, and so he's going to address these for them. So we talked a couple weeks ago when Andy was preaching through the early part of chapter 7 of husband and wife relations and how that should look for a healthy married Christian couple. He then, in verse 6 and 7, is kind of a hinge in terms of the literary progression, where he says, I say this as a concession, not a command, referring back to what he was saying in the first 5 verses. And then 7, each one has their own gift. And that leads into these next 3 parts in this particular text today, with the single, the married to an unbeliever. And then in the coming weeks, he's going to then talk about living, how God's called us, and the deeper dive on singleness and engagement and stuff. So this is kind of a transitional piece as we proceed through chapter 7. Chapter 8, he's going to change topics entirely to food offered to idols. Okay, so this is kind of chapter 7 is this discussion of marriage and relationships and that sort of thing. So we get to this and we hear marriage is a gift, or your marital status in general is a gift, whether you're single or not. We look at it and we've got so many cultural biases going on, so many things that could throw us off. So before doing that, let's address some of these. Like, what relationships are not? We think of it, and so often relationships, marital relationships, singleness, etc., it's something that we turn into an identity in our culture, but they're not an identity. So we might think of ourselves, oh, I'm not useful because I'm not married, or I'm not useful because I am married and I can no longer do things, or whatever, and it starts to become who I am. I am the married person, or going through high school or college and feeling incomplete because you're not dating someone, that sort of thing, right? We bind it as an identity, but that's not what God said that it would be. Secondly, they are not a right. So people will think oftentimes, I'm lacking, God hasn't given me what I deserve. I deserve a spouse, or I deserve a better spouse. Why did God give me this one? Or I deserve to be married again. Why did I have to have my spouse die or divorce or whatever else? And God isn't doing me right. But relationships are not a right. Third, we will sometimes treat relationships as hedonism. Hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure at all costs. I will do what is fun for me. So I've had friends in the past who were dating together, and the only reason they were dating is because they found it fun to be together. They had no purpose in pursuing marriage or anything like that. It's like, we're going to hang out together, and we'll be dating, and we'll spend time together and do that, and then at some point we'll break it off, and hey, it was good for a time. So we'll treat dating relationships, some people will treat marriage relationships, all these as just, for however long it's useful for me, however long it pleases me, however long it kind of gives me the pleasure that I want in life. If I'm enjoying it, I'll do it, and if not, I'll cast it off. Just like a gym club membership or something else. As long as it serves my needs, we're done. It's not hedonism. Relationships are not meant for just the pursuit of whatever I want to do, pursuit of happiness. Finally, relationships are not mundane. And what I mean by this is they are not merely a human thing. So mundane as opposed to like heavenly, as opposed to broader than just this earth. Mundane also we kind of mean day to day. So you can kind of see where those are related ideas. This is two different definitions of mundane. But oftentimes we'll treat relationships as if it's just, well, this is what humans do. And we'll treat them, rather than treating them as something that God has given or God is sovereignly in charge of, we'll treat it as something that we do, and it's off in this corner of our life. And this is part of where Paul gets after the Corinthians earlier on. He's like, you can't just claim the name of Christ and then do whatever you want with your body. You have to proceed in holiness. This is something God's given. So not an identity, not a right, not hedonism, not mundane. What they are, your marital status is a God-given gift for the gospel. It's a gift from God, verse 7. Each one has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. And sometimes when we hear this gift language, we just kind of pass over it a little bit. But there are two different words, primarily, in the New Testament that are translated gift. The one that's used here in verse 7 that is translated gift is the same one that we'll find later in 1 Corinthians when Paul's talking about the gifts that are given to build up the church. We often refer to it as spiritual gifts, right? What's your spiritual gift? How can you use it to benefit the church? Paul says, this is a gift. Later, spiritual gift, benefiting the church. How often do we think my marital status, whether I'm single, married, whatever, is a gift that I'm given to build up the church, to reach out with the gospel, to reach the lost, to love my brother and sister? This is the same category. This is the same kind of thing. Like gift, it's a good thing. So often it seems more like we're the 6-year-old kid at Christmas whose aunt gives them socks. Right? Like, I'm getting a present. Like, what? Hey, Mom. Right? Like, she gave me socks again. I don't care about socks. I wanted Legos. Right? We look at these things, and what we realize over the years, because then the other thing that happens, right, you have like the kids' gift exchange, then you have the adults' gift exchange, and the kids are all like getting their toys, and then they look at the adults later and they're like, why are you excited about a mixing bowl? You're weird, right? Like as we grow up, our desires for gifts change, and in many ways they go a bit from hedonistic to useful. right? When I was 6, when I was 10, all I wanted was like CDs, Legos, video games, stuff that I was just going to take pleasure in. As I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't need that stuff. I've got enough music. I've got, like, who cares? Yeah, mixing bowl, great. I can use that today. And the gifts that we're given, just like we're given spiritual gifts to serve the body, we are given our relationship status to serve. There's an end, there's a point to it, that God has given it along the way. God has not called you to be in a relationship or not in a relationship, and that's it. He's called you to be in a relationship and to use it for the gospel, to use it in life as you proceed. You could almost think of it as different toolboxes. I've been an IT guy for many years. Other people are a handyman or whatever. But so just imagine if I were going to work in my job as an IT guy in the past, and I walked in and my boss said, hey, I got a big job for you to do today. I need you to go to this customer and install a server or whatever. Okay, great. I've got this bag here to help you with the job today. I take it, I open it up, I get to the customer, open up the bag, and it's a bunch of hairstyling gear. I'm like, this looks, okay, look it up online. It's a $5,000 bag of hairstyling gear. This is really expensive, really high-quality stuff. Utterly useless to me in a profession as an IT guy. Or swap that around, right? You give someone an IT toolkit to go and style someone's hair, they're going to have really weird-looking hair. I promise. So the gifts that we have, if we have a gift that doesn't correspond to our calling, it doesn't help. If you're called by God to be able to use singleness for the glory of God, and all you're longing for is the marriage tool bag, that won't actually help you in that calling. If you're called by God toward marriage, and all you're wishing is, I wish I were still single, that's not going to help you in pursuing that calling. God has gifted us each in accordance with what he's called us to. So your marital status is a God-given gift for the gospel. Let's open the gifts. First, God's gift of singleness. Complicated, gospel-fueled freedom. It is complicated, but it is a freedom, and it's for the gospel. Really quick, like noting why would people be single? There are multiple causes, multiple reasons, right? Like he mentions to the unmarried and the widows. So Paul's not saying, hey, just to you who have never been married. He's saying some of you have been widowed. Some of you, your spouse has died and you're single now and you're wishing that you could be married again, or you're wondering what to do, trying to sort it out. Some of you have never been married yet and you wish you were. Some of you might be struggling with same-sex attraction and you've never wanted to pursue a marriage. Some of you might just be struggling with sin in general and you don't feel like it's a good time to get married. By whatever cause, you're single. And Paul says, for those who are, it is a good thing. To the unmarried and the widows, I say it is good for them to remain single as I am. Why does he say it's good? In Genesis, God said it is good, not good, for the man to be alone, and he created Eve. Now Paul says it is good to remain single as I am. First of all, in Genesis, Adam was the first man. If Eve hadn't come, none of us would be here today. So there's a strikingly different circumstance going on. But second, there's going to be some more of this in coming weeks as we get into these other passages of singleness. So I'm going to go through these a little bit quick and then address kind of a broad principle that Paul's getting at. First, urgency. He'll mention later in chapter 7, due to the circumstance, due to the time, there's a need for urgency. And I think it's useful to be single to be able to be active in life. Secondly, undivided attention. He'll say along the lines of those who are married have to split their attention between their spouse and between God and what he's doing. And I think it's useful to remain single, so that's what I'm doing. It's Paul speaking. Third, avoiding troubles. He says when you're married, there are troubles of various sorts. Ask anyone who's married, they can tell you there are troubles of various sorts. Relationally, or more things to think about, or whatever. And he says, I would have you avoid those. But I think most importantly, this is what I want to spend time on for a second, Paul's content. And he sees his singleness as a way to advance the gospel. In chapter 9 of 1 Corinthians, he's going to say later, look, I'm allowed to take along a believing wife. So is Barnabas. But at the end of chapter 9, he gets to this thing, I've become all things to all men so that I might win some, so that I might pursue the gospel, win people to the gospel for the glory of God. So Paul saw it in his circumstance, his calling from God, as fitting that he would be single. And he was totally content in it. And we share and even advocate for what we're content with, right? What we enjoy. Like when we're sitting around the office sometimes, and I'll talk about hiking. Some of the other guys don't like hiking. And they're like, yeah, whatever. You might think you enjoy that. Whatever. Go ahead. Do your thing. And I'm like, no, but it's great. We have fun. Like you go walk up the mountain, and it's tiring, and then it sees a beautiful expanse out in front of you. They're like, I'll drive to it. I don't know. Like, I like it. I advocate for it. They're like, nah, I could take it or leave it. Actually, I probably would rather leave it, right? So the things that I enjoy in that regard, I'll advocate for. I'll say, hey, hiking's fun. It's good. It's great. Does it mean that you must hike or else I'm going to call you a sinner? No. But it's something I enjoy. So Paul is content. He's advocating for what he has found to be useful for the gospel in his circumstance. And he's saying, hey, if you're single, don't just constantly think you've got to be married. Whether it's because you've never been married, whether it's because you're single after marriage by whatever cause, your next goal is not how can I get married, how can I get married, how can I get married? It's how can I serve God? And that might lead to marriage along the way. As he even acknowledges, right? He says, if you're not able to maintain self-control, what does he mean by that? When we look at 1 Corinthians 9:25, he refers to athletes. So this is after he's talking about giving up all things for the sake of the gospel. And he says, every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. When we talk about an athlete exercising self-control in all things, we're not even necessarily talking about sin or not sin, right? Like when LeBron James is out playing basketball and he's practicing for hours on end and he's saying no to certain activities so he can practice at 4 a.m. or whatever, that's not about sin or not. It's about discipline. It's about prioritization. And this is the same nuance that is there in 1 Corinthians 7 with self-control. It's this idea of discipline in life, of prioritizing what you're doing. This is not Paul saying, hey, if you lack self-control, just go get married, whatever. In Galatians, when Paul lists the fruit of the Spirit, he says one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control. So we have to be careful, like the distinction between my sinful or not actions, my mental control of myself, and the way I'm prioritizing life. Those are different things, and those are different aspects of self-control. So when he says here, if you can't handle self-control, like, look, if your singleness is bothering you so much that you're not able to sort life well, or maybe your singleness is because your spouse died or you're divorced and now you're a single parent with kids who you're taking care of, and it's making it really hard to schedule life and be able to handle pursuing people and pursuing the gospel, or whatever the cause, it's confronting your life in a way that disrupts it. Well, hey, get married. And especially, better to get married than to burn with passion. And yeah, what he means here is emotional burning with passion. Another example is in 2 Corinthians 11:29. He talks about who among you is sinning and I'm not burning within. Like this kind of passionate burning, like frustration in that case, or sorrow that is burning Paul when people are stuck in trials. In this case, burning with passion for relationship. So when Paul says it's good, it doesn't mean that getting married is a sin. And it doesn't mean that singleness is easy. Sometimes singleness is super hard. And sometimes when you're single, you're super lonely. And you go hang out with people, and they're married and they have kids, and you enjoy it, and then you go home and you wish that you could be in the same spot. That's not easy. Sometimes when you're single, you wish you could do certain things that you feel like you can't do because you're not married or whatever. It's not an easy thing all the time, but it can be a super good, freeing thing when pursued in light of the gospel. Second gift, God's gift of marriage, a complicated, gospel-fueled covenant. So first of all, we got an interesting issue here and in verse 12. Paul says, to the married I give this argument, not I, but the Lord. And then later he'll say, I, not the Lord. What he's saying here is not, this is what God says in this other spot, take it or leave it. What he's saying is, hey, right now, speaking to the married people, I'm basically quoting Jesus. I'm retweeting Jesus here. And with the verbs that he's using and the connection they make in Matthew, it's pretty clear that he's referring to Matthew 19. So I think we have that on a slide. And I want to look at this really quick just to read through it to set the context. The Pharisees came up to him, and they tested him by asking, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? He answered, Jesus, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. They said to him, why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away? He said to them, because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. So that's what Jesus said. And Paul now is saying, look, this isn't even straight from me. I'm quoting Jesus, I'm referencing Jesus. He says to the married, I give this charge, do not separate from your husband. Do not divorce your wife. If you have separated, remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to your spouse. He says, treasure your marriage covenant. Right? Like in Hebrews, it'll talk about keeping the purity of the marriage bed. All throughout the scripture, it'll talk about this. And the biblical default with marriage is hesed, the Hebrew word that means loving kindness, that means covenantal love. Like in many ways, when we try to translate it in English, we can't add enough strengthening to what it means. It's this devoted covenant faithfulness and love that God shows to his people all throughout history. So when the Israelites ran, God rescued them. When they ran again, he rescued them again. When they ran again in sin and spat in his face, he loved them and rescued them. And the Pharisees were like, can we divorce our wife for any cause? And Jesus is like, no, that's not the point. That's not what it was for. It was never meant to be just about enjoying life and then getting rid of it when it's no good. Divorce your wife for any cause? No. Jesus continues to pursue his bride despite every cause, right? God loves his people despite having infinite cause to cast them off. So the biblical default with approach to marriage covenant is love, is loving kindness, is covenant. And this is a dramatic contrast to our culture. Our culture is right with the Pharisees. Divorce your wife for any cause. I mean, if you get married at all, then later on and you don't like it, divorce your wife for any cause. There's no reason. In fact, it's actually more romantic, apparently, if you ask our videos, movies that we put out, it's more romantic to have an affair than it is to have a lasting marriage. It's kind of shocking. I've just been looking at it more recently, like some of the romantic movies that are out there. It's like, oh yeah, she had an affair, they had an affair, they had a divorce, they had an affair, they had an affair. Where's the movies that actually like praise a loving marriage going forward in life, despite trials and tribulations? It can actually be a great story. Like the greatest story of love covenant that we have is Jesus coming, dying for his bride to save us from certain eternal death. That's rejoicing. That's awesome. Our culture doesn't get that. So if we listen to the lies of culture, they say, you know what? Your husband's too much of a jerk, just leave him. Find a different guy, sleep with him, it'll be great. They're lying. It's stupid. And it's not going to actually be for your best. It's not what God has for us. What does the gospel say? Ephesians 5:22-33. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of his wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. People don't often like that section, but don't turn out. Keep listening. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having washed her by the washing of water with the word, so he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Guys, if you think things are difficult with your wife, you get to die for her. Okay? Wives, if you're having difficulty with your husband, you can submit to him. Husbands, you can submit to your wives. There are multiple calls in the New Testament to submit to one another. But lest we think that this is anything like kind of cheesy, just do whatever you want, the standard is Jesus. Like Jesus came for his bride, and he died for her, for us. Right? When he's saying this is what this is supposed to be about. And Paul says this mystery is great, and I'm referring to Christ and the church. Our marriages get to picture that. Our marriages, as we get frustrated with one another, as we fight on the way to church, as we fight on the way home from church or whatever, and we have to deal with that, and we do it in love, and we do it pursuing one another, as we do it setting an example for our kids, setting an example for the world, we get to picture Christ in the church as we forgive one another, as we repent, as we extend the love that God has given us to another unworthy sinner. We get to picture what Jesus did for us. Right? Our marriages get to proclaim the gospel. So when you're married and you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, it was easier when I was single. Because sometimes you think that. Like there are aspects of life where it's easier, and it's true. Don't let yourself get stuck in that. Let yourself get stuck in what's true about the gospel and what you have been called to. Marriage is complicated, but it is a good gospel gift of covenant before God that we can proclaim what Jesus did. Third, God's gift of a non-Christian spouse. Complicated, gospel-fueled peace. So here we have again this not I but the Lord thing, right? So Paul now when he says I, not the Lord, he's saying I'm not quoting Jesus anymore. That doesn't mean that it's not authoritative, it just means he's not quoting Jesus. So to the rest I say, if a brother has a wife who's an unbeliever, or if a sister has a husband who's an unbeliever, don't divorce them. So he's saying, look, you got saved and your spouse is not saved, or you entered into a marriage where your spouse wasn't saved or whatever, that's not a reason to leave. You might be sitting around at home and feeling like, oh, this is hard, my spouse doesn't share my faith, and that's super hard. Especially if your spouse is antagonistic toward the faith in addition to not sharing it. It is super hard. But that's not a reason to leave them. He says, bless your family, essentially. You think of people who are musicians or athletes, and they have kids, and their kids grow up, and you kind of expect their kids are going to be musicians or athletes also. And it's not because they're guaranteed to, like that it automatically passes through the blood and now their kid's a gifted athlete or musician, but they're in this context of musicianship. They're in this context of athleticism that they are naturally going to enjoy what their parents enjoy. And so sometimes they don't, and sometimes a superstar athlete has a kid who likes music or art or whatever, and sometimes a great musician or an artist has a kid who likes basket weaving or whatever it might be. But the connection that they have, someone whose dad plays basketball for a living, someone whose mom plays the piano for a living, has a greater opportunity to learn these things. So when Paul talks about your kids being unclean, or your husband or wife being set apart, holy, I think it's vital to recognize that word holy does not just mean they're like God suddenly. Holiness is set apartness, right? It's otherness. So God is the greatest set apart. He's transcendently set apart in everything, right? Morally, geographically, etc. Like God is set apart from us. We imitate his holiness. But when he says your kids are set apart, he doesn't mean, hey, just because you're a Christian mom, your kids are saved. It means because you're a Christian mom, your kids have greater access to the gospel than they would otherwise. When you're a Christian mom living with an unbelieving husband, or you're a Christian dad living with an unbelieving wife, you get to minister the gospel to your kids day by day in a way that they wouldn't otherwise see. I've had friends who have struggled with this a lot when they've had, they've married a wife who has kids from a previous marriage, and the previous marriage is an unbeliever who doesn't really care much, and they're disconnected, and they're struggling with how do we minister to our kids when they're with the other spouse, right? When they have their time with the husband and they're away for 3 days, and he just does whatever with them, and then they come back and they've got all these bad habits, they have these things that they believe that are wrong, that struggle there, right? When you stay together with an unbelieving spouse, you have the opportunity to continue setting your kids apart with regard to the gospel. You have greater access to the gospel. If they leave, if you get saved, like so many that we hear about, especially in other countries where changing faith is like, goodbye family, right? So I become a Christian, my husband just leaves me and proclaims me dead, that sort of thing. If they want to leave you because of your faith, Paul doesn't say grab onto their shirt and don't let go. He doesn't say make this a desperate longing like you must stay no matter what. He says, you know what? If they're going to leave, if they hate your faith and they're just leaving and divorcing you, let them go. God has called you to peace. We think of Romans 12:18 where he says, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with all men. Same kind of concept here. He's saying we've been called to peace in the gospel. We've been called to loving the lost. We've been called, and that includes those who are currently married to, if we're in an unbelieving relationship with a spouse. If they're saying, forget you, I'm gone, the way of the gospel is to love them and to long for reconciliation, to long that they would stay. But if they're leaving, we're not just going to find every single loophole and tooth and nail and drag them back into an antagonistic relationship where they now just hate the gospel anyway and hate you too. He says, in that case, let them leave. You are not enslaved. God's called you to peace. But this final verse, how do you know, wife, whether you'll save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you'll save your wife? That's the hope in this relationship. When you're in a marriage with an unbelieving spouse, right, the hope is you can save them. You can be the one that God uses to save them. Right? You can, by your influence on your kids, on your unbelieving spouse, you can share the gospel in real, tangible ways on a consistent basis. Think of 1 Peter 3, where he's talking to the wives. And he says, wives, love your husbands well. Be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, so they're unbelieving, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives when they see respectful and pure conduct. Like, this is one of those examples in the Bible where he says, sometimes your conduct without words is such a love that it does win people. And you might say to your husband for 3 months, you might try to evangelize him like, hey, I know Jesus and it's great. And he might say, forget it, I don't care. No, don't stop talking to me about that. And you can still live out the gospel by loving your husband, caring for him, being there, being devoted to him in such a way that it might win him. Even if you're not allowed to speak the gospel, you can live the gospel before your husband in the context of that relationship. So application stuff, as we're dealing with this, what does it look like to live in these relationships for the sake of the gospel? First of all, guard your heart. Stop pursuing invalid intimacy, which, for singles, don't set your heart on what it would look like to be with a guy tonight or be with a girl tonight. Don't set your heart on wishing you could be romanced all the time when that's not where God has you at the moment. And it's a struggle because it's thrown in our face all the time. Right? Like the movies we have, the billboards we have, everything that we have is all about relationships and misusing relationships for personal reasons all the time. So it's not easy. But if you let your heart get stuck there in a level of intimacy that you don't have currently, it's just going to tear you to shreds. And it's going to make it all the worse, all the harder. Secondly, develop your gift. As you deal with looking at what I've been given and how do I live that out, don't just say, oh yeah, I'm married, okay, great. Or I'm single, okay, great. Take that, look at life. What opportunities does it give me? The fact that I'm single, what freedoms does that give me? The fact that I'm married, what opportunities does that give me? The fact that I used to be married, but my spouse died or whatever, and now I'm single again with kids, what opportunities does that give me? How can I use these things for the gospel? What is it that God has given to me here? By virtue of the tool bag he's given, what does that say about what he's calling me to? And marriage, the stop pursuing invalid intimacy thing applies there too. And if you want to dive really deep on that, go back and listen to Andy's sermon again. Like, stop pursuing invalid intimacy outside of marriage. Third, fight the lies. Our culture and our own hearts will come up with so many lies based on the invalid perspectives of relationship. As we're thinking of relationship as an identity or as a right or as hedonism or as a mundane thing, there are tons of lies that crop up in our own hearts. You've got to fight lies with gospel truth, or it's going to undo you. Fourth, help one another. And this is huge. We all need help. Get in a community group if you're not in one already. Attend your community group if you've not been there for a while. Continue going to a community group if you are in one. Hang out with other believers in other contexts if you can. Talk through the issues you're going through. And married people don't treat singleness as a problem to fix. It's ridiculous. But we do it sometimes by accident. Oh, you're single. How can I hook you up? You're single. Who can I find that's also single and I can get you with? Like, singleness is not a problem to fix. It's a gift from God. And sometimes it's a gift from God for a time that leads to marriage. Other times it's a gift from God for a lifetime. Jesus refers to that in the other passage. Like, those who are eunuchs, it's to whom it is given. Like, those who are single for life. It's a gift. So when you're hanging out with single people, they're awesome people. And they're gifted by God for where they currently are. So don't try to fix their singleness. Single people don't look down on married people as being those trapped fuddy-duddies. Sometimes we are, but we can relate better if we love one another according to the gifts God has given us. Everybody, let's not look down on one another's kid problems. We're married and we have kids and the kid's screaming. It doesn't mean that the person's an idiot parent. It means their kid's sad right now, because sometimes kids get sad. Sometimes we get sad. We will relate better if we have mercy and grace toward one another's issues. Stop looking down on people who need assistance guiding their marriage or guiding their singleness or guiding their unequal marriage. Counseling and coming alongside one another is awesome. We can help one another by benefiting one another, by praising the opportunity to get counseling for needs and that sort of thing. So Ephesians 2:10, by grace we're saved through faith, not a gift of yourselves. It's a gift from God, and he's called us to works that he prepared beforehand for us to do. If we really believe that God has prepared works for us to do beforehand, that he's bringing us into those works, then these marital statuses he's given us, single, married, married and unbeliever, whatever, those are all toward that end. Here's what God's called me to, and here and here and here and here. So the relationship I have, it's not an end to itself. It doesn't stop here. It's part of going to that goal. So God's called me to serve in a variety of ways. My relationship status is part of how I serve him. It's one of the tools he's given me to work out those good works. 1 Corinthians 1, 4-9 is another spot that Paul uses this gift language in 1 Corinthians. I give thanks to my God always for you, because of the grace of God that was given you in Jesus Christ. That in every way you were enriched in him, in all speech and all knowledge, even as the testimony about Christ was confirmed among you, so that you are not lacking in any gift as you wait for the revealing of our Lord Jesus Christ, who will sustain you to the end, guiltless in the day of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is faithful, by whom you were called into the fellowship of his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. He has given you every gift you need. And that includes your marital status. Whatever it is right now is a gift that God has given you for this time to pursue the works he's given you to do for his glory, for the advance of the gospel. So open your gift, understand your gift, use your gift. Step forward and use this temporary time that he's given you as you look for eternity. And we look back to the cross and what Jesus did to save us. We look forward to when he returns to get us. And in the meantime, we're gifted to serve. And we get that opportunity to be a part of what he's doing as he rescues more and more people from the corners of the earth and brings them into the kingdom. So as we transition into communion in just a minute, think on this, right? Paul says that communion is about remembering Jesus' death until he comes. We're proclaiming his death. We're saying, this is what Jesus did for you. He died. His body was broken. His blood was spilt out for you to save you. He says, that happens. And Jesus said, I will not eat this again with you until I return. So even Jesus' own words were looking forward. So we proclaim his death. We encourage one another, build up one another until he comes. So as we're thinking on this, as we're thanking Jesus for rescuing us, as we're thanking him for saving us from our sin and freeing us, be thinking of what that looks like to look forward to the future, to serve him now in light of what he's done as we await that hope. Let's pray, and then I'll mention a couple things specific to communion, and we'll sing some songs and rejoice together. God, thank you again for the gifts you've given, and I pray that we all would be able to have gospel perspective in this regard, to love you and love your people well with what you have given us. That we would look back in rejoicing the fact that you've saved us in the first place, and we would rejoice that we get to be with you for eternity, and that our temporary marital status can be something that serves you. It is a gift from you to be able to be used. And I pray that you would build us up in that. It requires wisdom, it requires insight, it requires endurance. We need your Spirit to encourage us, to give us the strength we need as we step forward and as we serve until the day you take us home. Thank you that you can do that. We pray that you would. In Jesus' name, amen.